Governor Tim Walz from my neck of the woods has always been a fighter, and on August 25th, during the first day of the DNC summer meeting right here in Minneapolis, he was not afraid to use the F word. And if you think that I'm talking about what happens to be a litany of vulgarities, I will explain further. My name is Scott Schneider, and this is Fed Up in Minnesota.
Presently sending a final update to the onboard computers for antenna management. And we have a go for auto sequence starts. And we have auto sequence starts. 4, 3, 2, 1.
So the Democratic Party, the DNC, met here in Minneapolis starting on Monday, August 25th, for 3 days of meetings in front of thousands of delegates from all 50 states. The Minnesota contingent, including Governor Tim Walz, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and State Senator John Hoffman, as well as former DFL chair, now DNC chair, Ken Martin, all headlined with major speeches. Senator John Hoffman talked about the incredibly painful and shocking realities of the things that took place on June 14th, 2025, when the lone gunman dressed in a police uniform, suspect Vance Belter, appeared at his door and shot him and his wife before he ran off into the night, killing Minnesota DFL House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband. And Governor Walz himself stood up and made a rousing speech in which he had the audacity to use the F word when describing Donald Trump. Yes, that horribly scary word that so many Democrats in the media and so many people in public life don't actually have the chutzpah to use to describe Donald Trump. I'm sure they're thinking of it. I'm sure it's way deep down in many of their souls, and in their guts they feel it. You see it on the signs in the streets from all the millions of protesters this summer. They all know it. They all get it. So Governor Walz finally, after months and months of the Democratic Party not being able to buck up and say this word, finally came out and used the F word to describe Donald Trump. What am I talking about? Fascism, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, calling Donald Trump a fascist, because that's what the fuck he is, and that's what his entire MO and propaganda bullshit regime is all about. Installing fascism across the United States and destroying democracy.
Thank you. Last night I debated with my wife and daughter about how I would talk about Melissa Hortman. And she used the Effenheimer word many times. And so there was this debate in our house about I should just say LFG, LFG. Dude, you just gave me permission to say that. So good morning. It's an honor to be here with all of you today in Minneapolis. I am Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman. And you know what? Welcome to the North Star State, folks. You know, I'd like to say a few words about where we find ourselves, not only here in Minnesota, but across the country, as we work to reclaim what it means to be not only Democrats, but public officials who engage in public life at this critical juncture in America. I want to start off by thanking DNC Chair Ken Martin. You know, Ken, you've been instrumental in the successes we've had in Minnesota for 2 decades. 2 decades. And thank you for all that and for bringing this meeting back to your home state of Minneapolis, home state of Minnesota. We want to thank Governor Walz. Unbelievable. When he gets up here and he does his thing, I love that, right? And Senator Klobuchar, I'll still go down to Iowa for you anytime you want. Keith, you know what? Having our Attorney General that cares about human rights and civil rights is an amazing thing to have. And that gets to this, the challenge we do face. I want to speak about something that we all feel, is that creeping erosion of the public trust. That's not just in institutions, but that's in each other. And in this climate, we must recommit ourselves to governance over grievance, to service over self, and to action over anger. Terror in the night is not legislative reform. It's heinous. It's absolutely heinous. And so as we keep going through that piece of it, this is about courage. And this courage is to meet the fear with clarity, and the courage to put aside performance politics and focus on real solutions. It's about truth, not spin, not grievance, not the easy applause lines, but the honest work of governing. And it's about solidarity, recognizing that our work is bigger than any of us. When we govern with humility and humanity, we restore trust in our institutions and in each other. There's a personal story and a wake-up call. But what I just said is really how we preserve democracy, and this is how we lead. So what happened here in Minnesota in the early morning darkness, pure evil. It was a political attack on public servants and public service. And it was aimed squarely and slowly at our party. And it was a wake-up call. What is happening at a national level, the persistent dehumanizing narratives and conspiracy theories in public discourse are fueling the radicalization of individuals willing to engage in political violence against perceived opponents. Not okay. I'm still slowly recovering from my gunshot wounds, 9 of them. If you want to see the pattern on my body, it's the same pattern that's in my red door that I no longer have. Although I do still have a long way to go. And what my daughter has endured on top of all this trauma, with publications international objectifying her based on disability, with narratives of the night that aren't even true, that's ableist and that's shameful. And I wish the media would stop leading the headlines with that. Thank you. Thank you. But the last 2 painful months have given me perspective and the determination that the evil and violence on June 14th cannot and will not win. Our nation did cross a threshold on that night, and this horrific experience, what I've heard in a resounding voice from people all across our country and across the political spectrum, is this. It isn't about politics anymore. It must be about right and wrong, right? We've all witnessed when leaders use the immense power entrusted to them, not for the common good, but to settle personal scores, to protect themselves and push selfish policies and pit neighbor against neighbor. That's wrong, and we must call it out. Returning to the core values. I want to talk about 3 core values. I was going to try to hold this hand up, but it's hard to do when I got a rod in my finger. 3 core values, right? I'm not a political strategist, and neither do I have any of the answers. But there are some democratic values that we need to return to reclaim as a party, to get our country back on course. And it won't happen overnight, but we must start and continue on that journey today. That's why meetings like this are so important. First, we need courage, right? Amen. Second, we need truth, right? Third, we need to engage with Americans. What I'm saying about that is we really need to listen to them. And then we need to act on their behalf. I heard from many people across this country since June 14th. And Americans across the political spectrum are thirsting for those things once again. First, courage. In 1948, a courageous young Minneapolis mayor named Hubert H. Humphrey stirred the Democratic National Convention in the nation when he challenged our own party to step away from states' rights. Remember that was being used for? Segregation of the South. Humphrey said, the time has arrived in America for the Democratic Party to get out of the shadow of states' rights and to walk forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. How about that? Let's reclaim that courage. Let's continue to emphatically point out that when today's politics are warped into selfish agendas that harm families, strip communities of opportunity, and ignore the Constitution that it's meant to protect us. The second one is truth. Another Minnesotan, Walter Mondale, went from the U.S. Senate to become Vice President of the United States. When he left that role, he reflected on his service, and he said, we told the truth, we obeyed the law, and we kept the peace. Imagine that. That's the kind of leadership Americans are hungry for again. And instead, we too often see leaders bending the truth for personal gain and inviting crisis or spreading falsehoods that divide. He's written to benefit the powerful few. And in this country, right? And in Minnesota and every state, we feel the weight of those choices that enrich the wealthiest by hollowing out our health care, our education, and our future of working families. Not okay. So here's what we need to do. The third thing is solidarity. Paul Wellstone, my friend, his son and I have still to this day, we're the same age, go figure that one, used every waking breath he had to energetically fight for all people. And he used to challenge the unchecked power wielding by the wealthy and large corporations. He galvanized Minnesotans with the motto, Ken, we all do better when we all do better. We use that all the time. People believed him. Right? More importantly, they believed he was on their side. That's huge, right? I continue to hear that from Americans that they don't believe we're on their side anymore. And we need to be, right? We need to organize as Wellstone did and keep fighting so that we all do better. And we need to make sure people know we're with them. Not with the selfish interests that hoard resources, not with politicians who weaponize power, but with the people who keep this country moving forward every single day. All right? I want to close by saying this. What happened in the dark of night on June 14th to the Hortmans and to me and my family is that wake-up call to Democrats all over. We must call Americans to action in ways that don't incite intimidation and political violence, right? Having our own homes violated by pure evil cannot be the new normal. Right? Amen? I believe all Americans and Minnesotans want to talk to each other again without being demeaned and without the threat of violence. And here's how simple it is. Recently, a garage door repairman came to fix our door. And he realized who my wife is and what she's been through. He burst into tears and he asked Yvette, can I give you a hug? And she said yes. That guy, somebody from all paths of life and all political beliefs have paused to rethink what we have become. They're telling us enough is enough. This doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but it does mean we will have to begin to see the humanity in each other. As Humphrey, Mondale, and Wellstone and every person in this room does, right? We as Democrats, as Americans, as people with humanity, have to reclaim that. Will you help us reclaim that, people? The tragic loss of my colleague, my friend, and my political kid's sister, Melissa Hortman, has left an empty space in all of us. She was the most consequential speaker in Minnesota history. So now she's gone. It's our job to fill that space by upholding her legacy and the values she and her husband Mark held dear. Values we hold dear.
To introduce my friend, my governor, Tim Walz.
Wow, good morning. I could see the regret in all your eyes when you missed my rendition of Closer to Fine. So, surrounded by 15,000 of our friends. Well, it's great to see you, Ken. It's good to have you back home again. And welcome to the North Star State. Welcome to the land of 10,000 lakes. Home of the invention of the pacemaker, the Post-it note, and then on the weekend we invented water skiing because we had nothing else to do. Home of Mondale and Humphrey and Wellstone and Klobuchar and Hortman and so many others who drive every day, strive to make this state better, each day a little bit better. And I have to tell you, I'm feeling it in this space. I think for all of you, our state experienced incredible trauma this summer with the murder of Melissa and Mark, the shooting of John Yvette, the heroism of the Hoffman's daughter Hope, and so many stories that came out of it. The last time I was in this space was that night, which so many of us were here with Melissa, and we celebrated the Humphrey Mondale dinner, and we celebrated our accomplishments, and we looked to the future. And then shortly in the early morning hours, the tragedy came. A politically motivated assassination that the current President of the United States doesn't think it's worth his time to acknowledge, and a rhetoric from his followers that continues to perpetuate the climate that leads to these types of things. So I know we gather here in Minnesota. We have not moved on from it. It is not a new news cycle for us that we are forever changed by it, but we're a hardy people. We endure cold winters, normally hot summers, and we've seen these things happen. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that legacy that Melissa Hortman leaves was one about improving lives, as Ken said. It was about servant leadership. And today, part of our big debate in Minnesota, when you start school, it's considered sacrilegious to start school before the state fair is over. But some of our educators said it's good to start school and get them back in the classroom. So a lot of our kids are back in school today. And every single one of them who walked through the doors is eating free breakfast and free lunch every day. Every day. And every one of them had access to universal pre-K. Their families had access to the most generous child tax credit in the nation of the 50 states. Our teachers are the best qualified, and we invested historic amounts into public education. And by the way, come this January 1st, we will have the most generous paid family and medical leave in the country for all those families. And don't forget, after we get past Labor Day, we can start school, but I just want to be very clear about this. Minnesota always has been and always will be a union state. We're union proud. And I am proud of this state like so many others, and I will have to tell you, the privilege of my lifetime was stand beside someone we know was the most qualified and would have been a fantastic president in a President Harris. And look, we wouldn't wake up every day to a bunch of shit on TV and a bunch of nonsense. We would wake up to an adult with compassion and dignity and vision and leadership doing the work. Not a man-child crying about whatever's wrong with him. May his fat ankles find something today. Petty as hell. But look, I think for each and every one of you, I know you got a busy day ahead of you. I'm grateful for the work you do. I'm grateful for the focus, and my friend Ken, I've said this to you. The party in Minnesota, the DFL party, made it possible for a high school teacher with no money, no political experience to win a challenging congressional district. And I know this, candidates have a small piece of it. It's that infrastructure that surrounds them that makes that possible. And you're focusing on building the infrastructure in your states. And I want to be clear. If those who say, oh, our state is too hard to win a Senate race, or it's too hard to win a congressional race or whatever, I'm talking about the important races we need to organize to win, like school board races that we need to win. So the DNC has a responsibility at the top of the ticket, and I think we know these elections have consequences. We know there would be a very different timeline, but it's not for the lack of the effort of everybody in this room. We just have to make the case to them that the alternative and what we provide, the quality of life, the enhancements, the ability to form a union or send your child to school safely, the ability to have thriving economies that work for everyone, not just that 0.00024 that Senator Klobuchar was talking about, they'll do just fine. They will be fine without our help. Trust me on that. But the focus that we have to make, and I know this is it, we cannot allow, and I was glad to hear Senator Klobuchar say this and all of you, we're proud to be a diverse party. We are proud of the diversity of this country. We're not shying away from diversity as a strength and equity as a goal and inclusion being the air we breathe. That's what we should be doing. But what we have to be clear about is don't take the bait. It boggles my damn mind that in the midst of a military takeover of our city, the flaunting of the rule of law, the cruelness and the unconstitutional nature of the way they're attacking our neighbors, that the press finds the need to talk about, oh, there's a division in the Democratic Party. There's a division in my damn house and we're still married and things are good. That's life. That's life. We are strong. We are strong because we challenge each other. We are strong because we're held accountable. We're strong because we believe that there's a place for everyone here. Think of how easy it would be to be a damn Republican. Oh, what should I wear today? This stupid freaking red hat. What should I say today? I don't know. Just make sure it's cruel. Who do we listen to? That guy. Oh, the felon in the White House? Yeah, listen to him and that will be fine. There's a whole lot of that kind of crap that people are sick of. And I have to tell you, we can have our internal decision-making, our internal healthy debates, but I refuse to believe we do not have the luxury to fight amongst ourselves while that thing sits in the White House. So, I'm not telling anyone not to raise their voice. I'm not telling anyone to say, you are too damn old, man, look at you. I'm fine with that. We can figure that part out. But I am willing to say each and every one of us are unified around the idea that this cruelty must end. This slow-rolling attempt at undermining democracy, and I always get in trouble for it, and I'll continue to say it. I don't think we do any favors when we don't name it. These are fascist policies meant to take away ours. That is what they are. So for all of you here, this is not the law of the jungle. This is the law of human decency, of human rights reigning first. And I will have to tell you, I saw a statistic came out today is Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing that. You can do both. You can do both. So, this state's also the home to a few pretty good poets like Prince and Bob Dylan, who told us we would always provide, and Minnesota always will provide, shelter from the storm. But I also want to quote to the New Jersey folks here. They also got a pretty good poet. Today marks the 50th anniversary of the release of Born to Run. And as that poet said, it ain't no sin to be alive, and I think we're here. This room's born to run, running to a better future, a future that includes everyone, a future where our children are valued and lifted up, a future where immigrants are celebrated just like our grandparents and parents were, a future where we ask people to pay their fair share while we make life a little bit easier for others, and we find joy in the things that you find personally joyful, and I don't give a damn what your neighbor thinks about those things. Those are the things that we are here for. So to each of you, it's a privilege to be in this fight with you. It's a privilege to know that they are going to write about this time period. When he is pushed to the dustbin of history, when people use it as a cautionary tale to scare the shit out of their children of what could happen, this guy's out there. Those will be stories for the future. Our time right now is one foot in front of the other. Do the work that's in front of us. Win those 2 gubernatorial elections that are coming up here. We know we need Virginia and New Jersey. Get those won. Prepare for the midterms, 36 governor's races. Continue to push back every single day on this.
So this appears to be the inspiring new leaders, and older leaders as well, in the Democratic Party trying to rise up here and help take this country back from the sheer insanity that's engulfed us due to the felon and the fascists in the White House. And I was very warmed by the fact that Walz stood up against the headwinds that the consultancy class in the Democratic Party seem to freak themselves out over and say the actual word that needs to be said, as in fascism, fascist policies. It's darn fucking fantastic. And I honestly wish that Walz would be our vice president and Harris would be our president, because, as Walz said, Governor Walz said, we would not be dealing with this bullshit, utter, complete crap and destruction that we are every single day that we are today, when we get up and fear the news and look away in disgust at what abomination is in the White House. Thanks to Governor Walz and all the headliners in the DNC. I will be making a video about Ken Martin as well. Had some very powerful words and also used the F word as well. So I'm hoping that the Democratic Party will be listening to their leaders here, and this will be the beginning of a renaissance amongst the Democratic politicians and those who are currently in Congress, as well as those who are going to be running for Congress to unseat the bastards that are taking a chokehold on our democracy right now. My name is Scott Schneider, and I am fed up in Minnesota.